Hi, my name is Lona Muthamia Ochido, and I'm making it one of my life's mission to demystify the speech therapy field and to empower more parents on what they can start to do in order to optimize their child's communication outcomes. So whether you want your child to talk more or talk better, learn better, and overall optimize their potential. So stay tuned and feel free to send in any topics on speech and language development you'd like for me to tackle. Welcome to today's series of What Is series, and the topic today is what is the difference between speech and language. This is probably going to be the shortest What Is series with any luck, but such an absolutely crucial distinction to make. The topic I'm tackling today is, as I said, what is the difference between speech and language. So speech is a verbal means of communication or conveying a message. It requires very precise neuromuscular coordination, so planning and execution of the specific motor sequences. So the muscle, the brain communicates with the muscle and then tells it where to put the tongue for different sounds. Language, on the other hand, is a learned code or a system of rules that enables us to communicate our ideas and to express our needs. So reading, writing, gesturing, speaking are all forms of language. And it's partly innate, so you're born with it, and partly learned, so as a function of the environment. Language falls under two main divisions, so receptive language and expressive language. Receptive language basically refers to understanding and comprehension, which is usually the first to develop, and for a lot of human beings, it ends up being bigger or greater than the expressive component. Therefore, receptive language precedes and exceeds expressive language, which just means it comes or develops before expressive language and tends to be larger. It is actually the reason why babies will understand for a much longer time before uttering their first word. It is also the reason why for most adults, including myself, there may be words that, we may understand that when we are asked to define, it becomes a little tricky. Not for all adults, but for most adults. Like most of us may understand what bureaucracy means, but we may initially stumble when asked to define that word. It just means we understand it, but really expressing it is a bit difficult. But if that's not you, then you are in the outliers group. Well done. Expressive language, on the other hand, refers to the verbal output. So what is said, but not necessarily how it is said. That is speech. However, to effectively communicate, these three are absolutely paramount. So language, pragmatics, and I'll explain what that is, and speech. Not necessarily in that order, but maybe that exact order could just be right, because you first understand and then, all the social skills and then the talking. So pragmatics refers to the social use of language. Such skills as conversational skills, knowing how to start a conversation, turn-taking skills when you're having a conversation, topic initiation, what topic to say, is it in line with what is being discussed, maintenance and how to exit a topic, clarifications and repair strategies, non-verbal aspects such as, eye contact. So pragmatics falls under the broader umbrella of language. And I hope you can appreciate that language is much broader, much broader than speech. If you could imagine language is the food you're eating, then speech will be the cutlery. That is an awful analogy, but let's just roll with it. So speech is the how, while language is the what. So when parents bring their children for an evaluation, they mostly say that their child doesn't have speech or has a speech problem. When, for example, the child is delayed, as in maybe is non-verbal or not talking as much. But the issue in most of these cases, is in fact language and not the speech. It's funny actually, because the times when I have felt the problem was actually speech, parents have tended to say it was the opposite. It's very interesting. Like if the child is saying some words or phrases, but you can hardly understand, what they're saying, that would be a difficulty with the mechanics of producing the sounds or the words. In some cases, which actually is speech. In some of those cases, the parents have said that the problem was that the child was not talking. but you can see that is actually just speech. I therefore would gently say to the parent, but your child is talking. So it's not a problem of language, language. It's just that it's difficult to understand them. When a child is delayed in talking, the most important thing for them at that early stage is language and not necessarily speech. In fact, the starting point for me would be pragmatics. Yes, pragmatics. Can they attend? Can they listen? Are they giving me sufficient eye contact? Can they establish joint attention, turn take when we are having an activity, copy what I ask them to, or gesture for them to do, etc. It is far better to have a child who is saying 100 words but misarticulating them than a child who is saying 2 words with perfect enunciation. You cannot communicate with a child that only has 2 words, but with the other child you can. Also, teaching speech or correcting speech is the easiest thing compared to teaching language. It takes far shorter time if the language is already there. They're following instructions really well. It just makes it easier. So I really hope that this explanation demonstrates that speech and language are different terms that cannot be used interchangeably. I, of course, realize that this is a very brief overview of the fascinating distinction, if you think so, between speech and language and everything that is encompassed under language. But if you'd like to learn more, please read the rest of the blog and check out more of the associated videos in this series. As always, thank you so much for tuning in.